Life is full of greetings and farewells, with each representing a beginning and an end to a journey. This is no different in the world of Lupin III, as this is what Lupin Zero represents. Not only is this the beginning of Lupin III, where he comes in terms in taking the title from his grandfather, but meeting with Daisuke Jigen too, a meaningful friend and partner that will tag along with Lupin forevermore. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Lupin video. My name is Musical Joker, and Lupin Zero has dropped with 2 episodes. So today we're going to briefly discuss the summary of these 2 episodes, as well as my reaction and thoughts about these 2 as well. Honestly, it's such a shame that Lupin Zero is just 6 episodes long, because looking at it now, this is good. Like, really good. This could be one of the best Lupin III media, period. Before I go too deep into that, let me briefly discuss episode 1, Young Lupin Meets Wolf, and episode 2, Hang Tight to the Treasure on the Train. Episode 1 showcases Lupin being an extremely intelligent fellow, with him being the top of his class and a very lucky person amongst his gambling classmates. Knowing Lupin, he is still like this even today, so none of this comes as a surprise for how he is portrayed. However, it seems as though Lupin isn't really satisfied with what he has now. I mean, come on, being top of the class can only be so exciting. That is, until someone catches his eye. And that someone is, of course, Daisuke Jigen. Jigen appears at school since a wannabe gang has some sort of bone to pick with him. But that's a huge mistake, since Jigen is easily able to dispatch them with the use of his gun and walks off as he calls it a day. I don't know what's more terrifying though, the fact that Jigen has a gun, or a younger person wielding a gun is so effective with it, as he's able to knock someone's hat off and blow out their tire. Even at a young age, Jigen seems to always have wielded a gun extremely well, and may be related to him being overseas, but we don't see much of that as of right now. We do migrate over to a cabaret club of sorts, with Lupin treating a bunch of acquaintances to food, drinks, and smokes, to allow them the taste of the grown-ups world. Clearly, these young men aren't ready for the grown-up world if they consider this luxurious outing as a way into it. Trust me, being an adult sucks, and not always this nice. But I do get to buy my own stuff on my own dime. Unlike Lupin, since this is all coming from his family's funds, which really sets the tone of him being such a spoiled rich kid. And when I think of Lupin now, I would never call him that or think of him being that kind of character. Hell, sometimes he is broke and does a job for some quick cash. So it's great to see that it isn't just Lupin being the same character, although younger now. We see him regress into a childish nature, at times a bit mature, so it helps allow that room for growth for him to be something more in the future within the series. Jigen, of course, takes notice as he's also at the club trying to do some business deal with some sparkly weapons, only for Lupin to interrupt and steal those items too. The funny thing is, Lupin only reveals that he stole the items when he offers a deal to Jigen to save Lupin and a lady called Yoko from being chased by a bunch of Yakuza. What I thoroughly enjoy about this section here is how Lupin avoids and wards off these bad guys by playing tricks and messing around more akin to how a child would. You hear me say it a lot, as I've already have mentioned this before, but it works well with his current state of character. I would say almost the same with Jigen, but I don't know if this would be a stretch or not. When Jigen helps out Lupin and Yoko by shooting the guns off of the men and shoots them again to land on top of their heads and break, I feel as though there is an experience gap between younger and older Jigen, as I feel older Jigen may have broken specific parts of the gun with just a shot each while still in hand, instead of doing a roundabout way as young Jigen did, as well as Jigen wasting all of his ammo just to dispatch 2 men, while older Jigen would have done it in max 2 shots. Again, maybe a stretch, but I feel as though there is a level of inexperience for young Jigen compared to older Jigen, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Either way, after a hasty escape, they make it out and are driving down with a stolen car, with Lupin super excited, Yoko relieved, and Jigen just really annoyed or just not caring to be there. Come to find out that these men are Yakuza and are trying to get to Yoko and butt in on a deal she's trying to make. What kind of deal? You guys will find out once you're older, as it is enough to get Lupin and Jigen blushing. We finally come upon the Lupin mansion, and this is where we meet Shinobu, the maid of the Lupin family. Besides a brief interaction of truth-telling and annoyance from both Shinobu and Lupin, we come to find out that Lupin II wants Lupin to be on the straight and narrow, which comes to the surprise and confusion of Jigen, as Jigen is unaware of the Lupin family and their thievery. Lupin wants to have fun and not have to worry about some predetermined path that's set for him, as he wants to go at his own pace and do his own thing. And ultimately, Lupin doesn't get punished for stealing a car, and I think that's bogus, since I just steal a cookie and I hear it from my parents. Life is not fair. Yoko waiting it out a bit to get a ride to safety while Jigen retrieves his stolen goods, and then he tries to depart until Yoko stops to reward the boys for their assistance in rescuing her. To skip ahead here, we go through a quick and cute montage of the three being together as Yoko sings to them. Usually I find singing segments pretty cringe, but I didn't mind it too much, and the song was pleasant to listen to as well. It was overall pretty harmless. Past the montage, we see Jigen and Lupin discussing the gang that was after Yoko, the Fujioka gang, as they won't get to her since they are well protected within the mansion, until Yoko leaves and gets betrayed and captured, with Lupin and Jigen failing to catch up and saving her. With Yoko captured and on the boat about to be tortured, things are not looking so well, until Jigen and Lupin are making their way onto the boat thanks to Shinobu's help by notating information taken from Yoko's earlier phone call. Way to go to Shinobu. You gotta at least have some sort of skill to be anyway affiliated with the Lupin family then, huh? Unlike Lupin and Jigen, as they lack finesse, as they manage to get onto the boat amongst a sea of dynamite with the funniest sound I've heard Lupin make. Absolutely hilarious. The battle is far from over though, since Lupin and Jigen are cornered after almost being shot, but didn't thanks to Jigen's quick thinking, but he loses his gun. And worse, he has a wound. This comes with a very important talk, which reveals how Lupin is in a family of thieves, much to Jigen's surprise, but also introduces that theme of not wanting to have Lupin's life decided for him. He wants to make his own choices and forge a path all on his own, with Jigen backing him up and encouraging him with a decision to move forward or to stand back. Of course, the easiest decision for Lupin to make is not to just move forward, but to plow down anything in his way, including this gang and the boat, as they decide to sink the ship. I mean, hey, it was just waiting to happen, especially with all those explosives down there. Talk about liabilities. The Fujioka gang are at a panic and manage to come across Lupin and Jigen, with Fujioka seemingly having the upper hand by simply having a loaded gun, which Jigen doesn't, seemingly as Lupin pulls some literal Jackie Chan type shit here and disarms Fujioka with his uniform shirt and get them to fall off the boat, with the only thing left to do is to save Yoko, which of course they do successfully, and now have to wait on board while rescue comes to get them. I honestly love the banter here, as Lupin and Jigen have begun their new adventures together as close acquaintances, but not necessarily friends just yet, since Jigen still views Lupin as a spoiled rich boy, even more so when Lupin asks and then tries a cigarette for the first time. Lupin does pose a very interesting question, as who was the buyer of all that cargo? Is it someone important and we will see them later on within this anime? I have my doubts, but Yoko seemed to be a bigger player within this series, as she was the only person shown through promotional art and the only person, aside from the Lupin family, to be in the trailer of Lupin Zero. Seems like we may get a female addition each week, as we also received another person show up alongside Lupin and Jigen within the situation around that episode. This is usually a staple within the Lupin franchise. However, I feel as these additional characters add on to the experience of young Lupin and Jigen's adventures, as it expresses a different dynamic that we haven't seen before, as they are younger and not as cool, calm, and collected. And then on top of that, they continuously contribute to the overall theme of each episode, as we will see with our next female acquaintance. This episode closes out with a bunch more gang members coming for Jigen once again, with Lupin and Jigen going down to deal with it as they are discussing lunch plans for when they are finished with that mess. Overall, this episode is a really strong start to the series, as it feels as though we are exploring both characters and not prioritizing one over the other, especially within this first episode where they meet for the first time. Despite their differences, they work things out, although things can be a bit bumpy when speaking with each other, but they work well together once the action comes into play. The animation, by the way, from what I noticed, looks really nice. I didn't see anything off-putting or weird, and the characters look great, even the Yakuza. This isn't anything like Part 6, where I noticed a lot of weird jank in the characters' actions on screen. My eyes were completely glued to the screen, and yet everything looked good. Since this is the first episode, we have to talk about the opening next, as this is the first time we get to see it. And I will say that this opening is a visual treat as much as Lupin Part 1 is, maybe even a bit more, as it takes obvious inspiration from Lupin Part 1's opening due to the stopping images with a solid color covering it, text on screen, and iconic scenes or moments interlaced in between all of this. The many details included are beautiful treats and a great time for any of the older Lupin fans out there that have seen the source material prior to now. I also like that the title card is basically Part 1, but just Lupin Zero-fied. As for the opening music, it isn't anything too special, as it just repeats itself throughout the opening. I would say that this is the weakest part of the opening for me, as this song is fine, but I was expecting more variety to the opening. I wish instead of being repetitive, it would have been great if it added more percussion or more instruments within it to fill the space. Seeing this opening every once in a while is fine, but seeing it every time this anime runs? I'd only do that for the visual aspect of it, not for the music. Also, not saying I want Lupin theme Part 0, but it could have given us more than it did. Since I'm talking about music, Lupin Zero takes heavy inspiration from Lupin Part 1, as Lupin Part 1 music has been remade and placed within Lupin Zero, and it works really well. I wasn't a big fan of the music choices in Lupin Part 1, as it is a far deviation from songs we get nowadays, but Lupin Zero is making me rethink that choice, as I had never found the music annoying or lame when I watched through both episodes. More so that I was actively enjoying when they played and looked forward to hearing them throughout the episode. Again, this episode was great, and a wonderful introduction to both Lupin and Jigen's beginnings together as close acquaintances and then hopefully friends sometime soon. The main theme here in this episode is a great message to forge your own path despite what others may want from you, especially hearing that Lupin's father wants Lupin to be on the straight and narrow. I do feel as though this theme will be brought up once again in the future, and hopefully further fleshed out besides what was shown here. There isn't a whole lot to set up for the next few episodes besides that theme and Lupin and Jigen's relationship, as the episode is pretty self-contained, and so is episode 2. Anyway, that's all I have to say about the first episode. Let us move on to episode 2. As I mentioned, this episode is pretty self-contained and begins with Jigen looking at a picture of a necklace for his next job while smoking his caraway until Lupin arrives with a competition in mind over a yakisoba bun. Lupin also finds a bunch of pictures of bad creeper shots done by the photography club being sold for money. Now, why is this important? Well, Lupin uses the photos he found earlier to mess with Jigen in hiding the photo of the necklace he had earlier to force Jigen into a competition. With them being more well acquainted, Lupin has found the one person that has interested him the most and is able to challenge him in some fashion, which more events related to that occurs later as well. Ultimately, Jigen doesn't care about the photo misunderstanding because he knew it wasn't him, and he doesn't care about the competition, as he's pissed off and annoyed with Lupin doing so much over a crappy game. We see how Lupin can be extremely childish and annoying, even over such trivial things, and Jigen's just not here for it. Moving on, we move towards the train, where Jigen's new job is with some thugs as they're trying to move the earlier seen necklace to a safe place and are avoiding any trouble. With Jigen being the bodyguard, despite some pushback from the men, he goes around surveying the cars to see if there's anyone suspicious, until we run into Lupin, who is disguised as a bento salesperson. Originally, Lupin wants to help Jigen out in protecting the item, but he also berates his skills, claiming that he could do better. But Jigen isn't interested, and basically tells Lupin to screw off. From that moment, Lupin puts it on himself to make it a competition once again and challenges Jigen. This competition is to stop Lupin from stealing the necklace. Yet again, we do see the maturity of Lupin and the different dynamic they have in their relationship. With Lupin thinking of a plan to be able to steal the necklace, we come across the woman of this episode, Marinelle, a shaman from a far-off land looking to retrieve a stolen artifact from her tribe. Although not wanting help from Lupin initially, Lupin convinces her through his own power of being a shaman, and they work together to get past Jigen and retrieve the artifact. They're able to retrieve the item for a short time, avoiding the men and Jigen, although Jigen could have stopped them, but he cares about Lupin deep down. he just has that tough exterior, you know? Jigen does manage to catch up to Lupin and Marinelle, thanks to her leaving a trail of dust to their location, with Lupin being thrown out and the girl and necklace taken by the thugs. I honestly really enjoyed the scene with Lupin being thrown out and falling into the house of some resident and stealing a bowl of rice as a snack. Lupin really does have sticky fingers and can't keep to himself at all. With Lupin seeing this as a showdown, he's ready to rock and roll and save Marinelle and the necklace. The next scene is what I think also captivates me about this episode the most, as we go back to Jigen and Marinelle being on a train led by the thugs, discussing the stolen item much to Jigen's surprise, as well as Lupin and Jigen's relationship, which was also mentioned very briefly by Lupin where Marinelle asked him, but he didn't get to finish. Jigen doesn't find Lupin as a friend and is unsure of what to think of him since Lupin's personality changes on a whim from being mature to acting more like a child. Despite how annoyed Jigen became with Lupin, he really enjoyed saving Yoko with him and actually has a smile on his face. To get a bit ahead of myself, I really appreciate this scene here as it makes our protagonists more dynamic than they have been in a long time, as the show doesn't have Lupin and Jigen be good friends right away. We see the cogs turn with both come to the mutual understanding that despite their differences and flaws, and how much they would want to deny it, mainly Jigen, they see each other as equals and as friends. Jigen not responding to when Marinelle states that when we think of a person like that and smile, then they are considered friends in her country, which further pushes the idea despite him not wanting to think so. And overall, I really can't stress how much I really like their dynamic in the relationship within the series, as I've seen many people complain as an issue that Lupin Zero doesn't really change their characters and keeps Lupin and Jigen's relationship as the same as when they're older. And I can agree with that to a certain extent. These two naturally bounce off each other, and even though they may annoy one another constantly due to their personality differences or achieving different goals, they really still do that as grown men today. That makes sense. However, I don't agree, as I see how Lupin annoys the hell out of Jigen in a sense of testing him, but also in a very childish manner. Lupin comes off very obnoxious and bothersome to Jigen, as he is a spoiled brat due to his upbringing and how he acts with the skills he has acquired from his family of thieves. Both episodes show that off very well too, such as being in the cabaret club with his so-called friends and how Lupin interrupts Jigen's business because he wants to continue messing and testing Jigen. When they're older, Lupin doesn't get in Jigen's way that often. It's a very rare situation when that does happen, and there is no need to test him as Lupin is fully aware of what Jigen can do. So yeah, I feel as though their dynamic is close to what it is today, but it isn't quite there yet as there are still some issues. They both need to work out together and they need to fully understand each other as a person and their background. It sounds like group therapy, but you get my point. Back to the episode, we see Lupin riding a delivery food bike to get back onto the train to reach Jigen and Marinelle, with them encountering each other once again. This is where the central theme of forging your own path comes into play, as Lupin uses this example of working as a lackey for these horrible people to get his message across. Lupin wants to know who is the person that decides what person Jigen serves, as Lupin is someone who doesn't listen to anyone and does what he wants whenever he wants. This clearly resonates with Jigen as he decides to go against his business partners when Lupin and Marinelle are cornered and are endangered. This of course leads the group winning over the thugs as they get all thrown off the train, only for our main characters having to stop the train somehow and to save all the animals in the train. They, of course not knowing how to operate a train, make it much worse as they speed up the train and kill the brakes of the train too. Jigen, in a last-ditch effort, manages to get the train to change lanes while almost falling off, to then actually doing a killer shot to have a bunch of coal fall on the train to slow it down. Mind you, when he tried changing the lanes, he had to use a crap ton of bullets. Honestly, I don't know where those bullets came from and where they were in episode 1, but they're here now. And at this point, if it is inexperienced or a tough thing to do, is a tough call to make. But at this point, it doesn't matter because everyone is safe now. Something silly to point out, but it was something stupid Jigen did, was that he almost lit a cigarette amongst all the ash of the coal. But Lupin, being a good person, and dare I say it, a friend, he reminded Jigen of their situation and that it's not a good thing to do right now. Everyone is relieved and laughing, even the cute animals. And then we get a nice, heartwarming scene to finish off their adventure and the episode in a way, together with Marinelle. As she departs back home, while she leaves her earrings for the gang to keep and sell, and also a reminder to Jigen that her incantation worked, with Jigen of course basically being a tsundere and saying whatever, but yet again shows how these two guys are closer on becoming good friends. The episode ends with Lupin and Jigen deciding to have another competition, once again for a delicious treat by the station, with Jigen actually participating this time and humoring Lupin. With the two going after this delicious treat, we see them run off with Lupin stating how their showdown isn't over yet after Jigen throws all of the money they earned from selling the earrings to create a distraction so Jigen can get the upper hand. All of this clearly indicating more will come within the following episodes. Yet again, I think this is a great follow-up episode to Lupin Zero as we see young Lupin up to his no-good antics to challenge Jigen, but also cultivate their friendship. Again, I wouldn't call them outright friends right away since Jigen is still a bit in denial, but it is far closer than it ever was before. And for all you Persona losers out there, think of it as a social link rank up. I can't believe I used a Persona reference. I also enjoyed Marinelle as a character as she had influence over the episode since an artifact with great importance was taken and she wanted to get it back, but also having influence over the current state of Lupin and Jigen's friendship and how she views friendship despite Jigen's opposite way of thinking from her. I appreciate when an episodic character is used well to convey specific themes or messages and not be turned into a generic character. I find Marinelle memorable and adorable and a great addition to this episode. I wonder what they will do with the next coming episodes, as I assume they will find ways to push the message of being your own master and doing what you wish, as well as the next episode, episode 3, being the competition that Lupin needs to take part in to be able to continue the Lupin lineage of thievery. I'm interested to see how much inspiration from the young Lupin manga will be taken for the next following episodes as well, as I know episode 3 might be taking some heavy inspiration from it. But this series is just chock full of references in and of itself. I would also appreciate at one point Lupin and Jigen being angry at each other or dueling with their respective skills, as we haven't gotten that quite yet from them, but it makes sense since we kind of just got started. We're currently on the halfway point too, so I wonder how they will include Lupin the First and Lupin the Second within those themes as well. I'm excited to see what they do next. Anyway, that was a lot to talk about for 2 episodes. However, there will be more as Lupin Zero Episode 3 will be premiering on Friday, December 23rd. I am definitely excited to see more, so don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more content on my channel. And until next time everyone, farewell.